Popping bottle champagnes all night. Running up your mouth like it's all fine. She looking like a she looking like a in a skirt tie. 또 뭔데 자꾸 어쩌고 저쩌고 입을 놀리는 거야. 너 혹시나 예쁘다고 질투하는 거야. 그래봤자 타격감은 1도 없을 텐데 시크하고 유니크한 거 그게 나. Every day and night 단 나답게 oh 단 나답게 Every day and night.
Hey sightseers, Sightseeing Sally here. You'll notice we're starting out somewhere else besides the town we're going to go explore, and that's because two reasons. The first one being somebody had asked, where do we stay when we're out filming these places? And I thought, since we're so close to the town we're staying at, I thought I'd give you a quick glimpse of where we're at now, just to give you an idea of what we've been doing. And the second reason has everything to do with this e-bike you see sitting here. I was approached by Mokwheel asking if I wanted to try out one of their electric bikes, and frankly, because I have the trusty sightseer along, I had considered passing on the opportunity, but then when they said that they would give it to me for free, I couldn't resist, because what's a better way to explore a small town than from the seat of an electric bike? Now, I'm not going to try and sell you this bike. That's not my thing. I've never been one much for sales. But I will tell you this. The poor sightseer that you see back here is being officially retired. I hate to do this. She's been with me through thick and thin. But the super sightseer is so awesome to ride that I don't know that I could ever go back. Anyways, enough on that. I'm going to show you around quickly here where we're camping, and then we're going to head over to Dexter, the small town that we're exploring today. Originally called Horseshoe Lake, in the past Lake Van was just a dry basin that filled during wet weather, in effect creating a marshland. Later, when the early settlers arrived and the area around it was taken up as a homestead, the lake was artificially deepened. Additionally, seepage from the nearby canal added more water, resulting in the lake you see today. There's one brave little guy that's looking to see what I'm doing. I think a lot of people feed these ducks, so they're pretty used to people being around them. Where we're staying is over there in the campground of Lake Van Park. Over there is Lake Van. It's part of the town of Dexter now. However, when I was doing research for Roswell, it's my understanding that this may have been its own little settlement at one point called Lake Van, and that there may have even been a post office here. And then over there you can see housing. Probably some of the nicer housing that you'd find in the town of Dexter. There's some even bigger houses over on that part of the lake, closer to where we're camped. I'll show you that in a moment. You can see they have a pool, closed now because of winter. There's also this little lakeside restaurant right in front of me. We haven't eaten here yet because we do most of our own cooking. However, I have been told that they serve a combination of American and Mexican food, and that is pretty good. So take that with a grain of salt. Maybe one of the locals could fill us all in. Now a restaurant. This used to be the Hobby or Hobby, depending on how you pronounce it, home, which was one of the first families to settle here on Lake Van. And then somewhere about 200 yards from where the restaurant is, which would have been the old Hobby home, was the Campbell place. I don't know if it was up over in here in that residential area or if it was on the lake itself. And just like I thought, the post office was here on Lake Van. It ran for 2 years out of the Campbell home, wherever it was here. Because, you know, it's not like somebody gave me a map and said, here you go, this is where the old post office on Lake Van was. Regardless of the exact location, I wonder how many people from town know that there was even a post office out here. Much less that one of Dexter's first residents used to live in their favorite lakeside restaurant. Then there's this rather large dock where you can see people enjoying the Sunday afternoon fishing. And then this really nice little wooded area with playground equipment, a picnic shelter, and picnic tables. Last but not least, the camping area. In answer to the question that we got, we try to do a combination of boondocking, staying in free campsites when we can find them, staying at small town parks or city parks because, one, it helps provide money, give money back to the places that we're exploring, and two, a lot of times they're fairly reasonable with full hookups. This is only like $15 to stay to have water, sewer, electric if you need it, so not bad considering to stay over in Roswell at an RV park for an entire week. It's like $250.
Which some might think is totally out of this world.
Whereas here, we paid only $95 because they give a little bit of a discount if you pay for an entire week. I don't know. I mean, to me, it's all about finding budget-friendly travel accommodations for our setup. Our home away from home. Well, now that you got the lowdown on where it is that we're staying when we're out exploring, and this lovely park that's a part of town of Dexter where we're going to head to next, let's move on. In case you're wondering, building the railroad and the Northern Canal is what brought people initially to Dexter. If you're wondering how Dexter got its name, it's really a rather interesting story. Apparently in the beginning there were 3 men involved in creating or designing the town, and one of them, only one of them, was married. And so because he was married, he was given the honor or the distinction of naming the town. He was a farmer originally from Iowa, and so he decided to name the town Dexter after his hometown of Dexter, Iowa. Many of the trees that you see around town, like the ones in front of me here, were planted by the town's first mayor back in the early 1900s. Apparently it was a pet project of his where he actually went out himself with everybody else and planted the trees. There were cottonwood cuttings that they planted around town just to give shade and basically to give the town a more cozy, homey feel. Maybe not cozy or homey, I just added that myself, but you get the picture. It was to spruce up the town. No pun intended. By the way, this little park here was dedicated and named for one of Dexter's most outstanding civic leaders, Mrs. F.L. Elfie Millhop. Fingers crossed I have her name pronounced correctly. But they recognized her on her 93rd birthday back in 1981. How cool is that? I got the sense from the research I did on the town of Dexter that the people, at least the old-timers anyways, really took a lot of pride in their history and tried to keep that history from becoming lost with the passages of time by recording it in a special book made specifically about the town. Not to mention, besides that little park we were just at, they have this space over here with 2 things dedicated to 2 different people. This one here, a tree was planted by the people of Dexter in memory of a man, Floyd Leslie Bradley. He died at sea on September 25th in 1918. And then there's this bench over here that's dedicated to the memory of someone else, Emilia Fuentes, who died in 2003 on February 1st. While I don't know Emilia's contributions to the community, it's not a name I came across when I was doing my research, it is apparent from the bench here that the family misses and loves them dearly. You'll notice that the town of Dexter is split kind of down the middle, probably not exactly the middle, but you'll see that the railroad comes through here along with the highway. I believe that's Highway 2, New Mexico Highway 2. And we'll cross over that here in a moment. But first, I thought I would share with you a couple more bits about Dexter's early history. The first telephone system came to Dexter thanks to a man by the name of P.P. Clark. With 2 lines and 12 telephones, calls could be made by connecting the 2 ends of a line together. Eventually, a switchboard was added, and with it an operator in the form of Mrs. Clark. She took care of the board until her health no longer allowed her to do so, at which point her daughter, Mrs. O'Brien, took over. As you can see, I'm now across the railroad tracks and the highway. I didn't film that because I felt like it was a little too hairy-carry crossing the tracks and the highway at the same time. But what I wanted to show you over here is this self-serve kiosk for getting fresh drinking water that's been processed by reverse osmosis. One of the things I learned when I was researching Dexter is that the early residents really had a tough time getting good drinking water. Because although they were able to access water with the artesian wells, because of the way the water was underground, some of it was very sulfuric. It had a really bad sulfur odor. So bad that people often said that Dexter needed to do something about their sewer problem, when in reality it was just the odor of the water from that level in the artesian system. So they had to actually truck in water. Sweet water is what they called it, because that's how they described the water back then, is if it tasted sweet or was good to taste when drinking it, that's what they called it. Back then you would have paid 25 cents, not for a gallon, but for 50 gallons in a barrel, and you didn't dare waste any of it. Another interesting factoid about Dexter that a lot of people probably don't know is that it's home to Mike Smith, who was the 13th Triple Crown winner, riding Justify. Since we made it across the highway, I thought we'd take a quick zip through this residential area so you can see it. I haven't really been down this way myself, so this is a first for me. Hopefully I don't get chased by any dogs. I've had quite a few of them be attracted to the super sightseer. For whatever reason, dogs just think that this is the greatest thing to chase. You can see the tall trees that line this street. I imagine some of these were planted back in the early 1900s when the mayor had that initiative, that project to beautify his town. Honestly, it is really nice to see all the trees that are budding, given that we'll be heading back to Wisconsin, where I know that there's a ton of snow yet out there. Not really looking forward to that. See what I mean? A little more over here on the left. All I can say is I'm glad they're behind fences. Oh, here's some more. By the way, for those of you interested in learning more about the Mokwheel, I'll have a link for you in the description box of this video. Like I said, not going to try and sell you on it, but for me, I think it's a fabulous bike, and it definitely can outrun the fastest dog out there, at least the ones behind fences. Well, this here, Dexter's downtown. You can see they have a hardware store, a place called the Cafe Cha-Cha-Cha, Pecos Valley Teen Center, and what used to be a barber shop. And then if you look towards where Marty's headed, There's a building where it says up above Los Ranchitos, and then next door to Los Ranchitos, or the former Los Ranchitos, is the Dexter Town Hall and Public Library. The first mercantile to be built here in Dexter was the C. Weidman General Merchandise Store. That was built in 1902 by a man by the name of Charlie White. And while it'd be easy to assume that would be somewhere on this street, that was actually over on Lincoln Avenue. Interestingly enough, a two-story wood frame hotel used to stand where modern-day Dexter's Town Hall and Public Library now sit. Library? Did somebody say library? I promise I won't drag you in there this time. And if I'm not mistaken, Kemp Lumber Company out of Roswell had a lumber yard where modern-day Dexter Hardware now sits. Other early businesses in town included a rooming house, a barber shop, a livery barn, and a real estate office. There was even an independent Order of Oddfellows and a Rebecca's chapter, though they eventually went by the wayside. Here's a shot of Lincoln Avenue looking down, I believe, in the same direction as this photo. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. I think that there is the location of the old C. Weidman building. And then somewhere over here would have been the Elford Insurance Agency, and this possibly was the Tallman and Hare machine shop. Of course, I'm not from here. I'm just making the best possible guess based on that old photo and what we see here today. By the way, for those of you wondering, the Nothing Fancy Grill is open Monday through Saturday. And then across the street would have been the old Gerard House, the Dexter Beauty Shop, and the Elric Saloon. That would have been if you would have time traveled here to 1908. It looks like, in keeping with past traditions, there is a hair salon here. Citizens here were so law-abiding, they didn't even have a jail. Though the town was officially put on record in 1903, it wasn't incorporated until 1910. During those 7 years, there wasn't any government, nor was there any need for it. With one man acting as deputy sheriff and town constable, and another as the justice of the peace, the old law west of the Pecos ruled the town. Upon arrival, all guns had to be deposited with either a merchant or one of these men. Prior to 1902, Dexter residents had to travel to Eddy and then later to Hangerman to get their mail. While you can see they now have a modern-day post office, its early beginnings was just a shack. And when I say a shack, I mean literally a shack. You can see here what I mean. It's a far cry from what they have now today. Another interesting piece of early Dexter history involves the likes of Harry Holly. An enterprising man, Harry got his start raising bees on a bee farm. Later, he decided to try his hand at breeding frogs. This new venture was going quite well until all the local cats discovered that frogs make a tasty lunch. In the end, Holly gave up his frogs in favor of becoming a chicken rancher.